What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Early Edge College Football Preview Show, Week 5 edition. I'm your host, Alan Bell, and we've got a fantastic show lined up for you today. And I'll tell you what, before we get to that, let's take a look at how we did last week. And I'll tell you what, not the best week that we've had, but you know what? It's all right. Sitting here, 34-23 is our season record, 59.6%. And I tell you what, man, last week was tough. Those happen in college football. This week, looking a whole lot better. Let's bring in the stars of the show to break this thing down. First up, my man, Chip Patterson. How are we doing, sir?
Look, not great here, 2-4-1, but luckily I think we're still sitting at 15-11 here on the early edge for the entire season. And in the Cover 3 lock stock, I'm sitting here looking at 22-13 on the season. It's going to happen. We're going to take our licks. The regression monster comes for us all. Sometimes he pulls us out of a ditch. Sometimes he knocks us off our high horse. Shame on me for getting so chesty about the North Carolina Tar Heels. I probably dug my own grave with that one.
Well, let me tell you this, and I like to think, and well, quite frankly, I know, like our audience in this show specifically, I think is the most intelligent, and I'm not saying that any of them aren't, right? But I love this
NFL betting audiences are not intelligent.
No, hey, well, and I was gonna say this, buddy. You talk about the regression monster, dude. Last weekend, I hit on Sunday alone 0-11. I couldn't do that if I tried. I'm telling you, man, like it happens. It comes for everybody. We have been doing very, very well. I think leading the team, and then boom, not anymore. But you know what? Those happen, man. Those weekends happen. All you could do, collect it, pick it up, move forward. Speaking of picking it up, moving forward, our man, Tom Fornelli. Our man is not only crushing picks, doing everything he is across the CBS Sports brand. Our man has been moving as well. It's glad to have him back. Love it, man. Tom Fornelli, how we doing, sir?
I am great. I'm happy to be back, and I am 100% going to blame last week's 1-2 record on the move. I was distracted. I did not have enough time that I need to put forward winning picks, but we are settled in here. Today I got finished my my new setup downstairs in my little office. I've got all my screens set up. I'm ready for Saturday, and I am absolutely ready to crush this week's picks.
Man, I love it. And I'll tell you what, man, I've been watching you guys, on the new SportsLine show on CBS Sports HQ, week or daily, each night around 7 p.m. Eastern, I believe. And you guys have been crushing it on that. The background, the house, like everything looks great there for you, Fornelli, man. I love it and loving that show. And everybody, I know you've been hearing a ton about what is going on with the expansion of the Early Edge SportsLine as a whole. I can't tell you everything, but I will say this. If you enjoy the Early Edge and you enjoy it for 20 minutes a day, just go ahead and multiply that by 5 and then by 10, all right? And then add on nightly live betting as well. So we're all exhausted over here. Everyone's been working. Yeah, don't ask me to do math. I'll just say if you enjoy the Early Edge, very, very soon, you're going to be getting a whole lot more of it, not to mention SportsLine at night with Tom Fornelli, with Chip Patterson. I think I saw Brady Quinn on there the other night, breaking down Monday Night Football. I mean, the guests and everybody is fantastic. You're going to see it. You're going to love it. Speaking of loving it, my man, Jacob Fedner. Bro, now, the first time you joined the show, you went 4-0. All right? This one, not so much. Now, like I said, when you start 4-0, we expect it every – I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. How we doing, buddy? You doing all right?
Feeling good. I can't stay perfect every week. I'm fine with all my picks last week. I went 1-2, but – I mean, I like where my picks stand.
Oh yeah, dude. Hey, look, the worst thing that you could do is whenever crazy weeks happen, especially in college football, which I think is the hardest sport to bet consistently. The worst thing you could do is just change up your mindset and what you're going about and how you go about doing things. That's the worst thing that you could do. Stick to it, man. The plan works. All right, Fedner, we're gonna stay with you here. All right, storylines that affect the betting lines for Week 5. All right, quickly, you don't have to break down everything, but where does the SportsLine model stand in terms of what we saw in Week 4, what you're looking at in Week 5? And for anyone who is new to joining the show, Jacob Fedner is essentially our SportsLine model. What you see on the website, what you see in terms of A-graded plays for college football, B, C's, all of that. This is him. This is why we have him on the show. Last week, we were speaking about seeing a lot of, total trends that the model was hitting on very well. Where do we sit now?
So Chip talked about Week 3 being sketch week. I think last week turned out to be a lot more sketchier than Week 3. There were some weird games with wacky outcomes. USC, we had a pick on -5.5 against Oregon State. And before that game, teams with a +4 turnover margin were 194-23 over the last 5 years. That's 89%. USC was +4 in turnover margin. That didn't hit last week. I went through and made a bunch of adjustments, and I like where the database is at right now. The big trend of this week is value on heavy favorites versus bad teams. We got some value on Fresno against UConn, even without Jake Haener. Logan Fife's coming in for his first career start. Memphis -19.5 versus Temple. Although Memphis has been very bad against the spread, Temple is still one of the worst teams in the country. And Eastern Michigan -20 versus UMass, which I will get to later. And if you like teasers, this could be a good week for you. We have some good value on Georgia -28 and USC -25.5 versus Arizona State.
Well, I'll tell you what, like when you see Georgia, anything below 30 points.
Looks
as
good.
Dude, you feel like it's Christmas. You're like, oh, my God, man, I'm getting Georgia for that. No, nice job, Fetner, on there. All right, Fornelli, coming over to you. All right, so we've got Hurricane Ian that is hitting Tampa Bay literally as we speak. Fetner, I know you're in Jacksonville, man. We're thinking about you. Hope everything stays good, that you're good. Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Fornelli, how is this going to affect college football this weekend? What are you seeing because of that?
Yeah, I always say, the first thing you have to consider when there's a hurricane coming is how it's going to affect your betting. And that's exactly what I do. Because, listen, there's one thing, like with football being played outdoors, the weather has long been a factor in how a lot of games play out. And especially there is no factor that has had a bigger impact when betting totals in the sport of football when you're playing outdoors than the wind. Well, hurricanes bring a lot of wind. Hurricanes also bring a lot of driving rain, and it's hard to play football. Just think, let's go back to the NFL week 1. The Bears and 49ers were playing in a very heavy rainstorm, and it completely changed the way that they had to play their game. Neither team was able to pass. They had to run on every single down. It lowered scoring, and it kept to a low-scoring game. And we're going to see that kind of impact all throughout the state of Florida and the Southeast. It's going to be important to track where the hurricane is, when games are being played, and what kind of conditions they're being played in. Because, just for instance, if you look at that Clemson-Wake Forest game where I think the total's down to 40, if that game was being played on a 75-degree sunny day, there's no way in the world the total is low as 40. But with the hurricane coming through and the winds that will be in the forecast, it's really lowering totals. And you have to kind of figure things out, like which teams might benefit from it, which teams will it hurt, how will it impact totals. These are all things you need to consider when a hurricane is coming through as a gambler. There are other more important things. But,
And also, look, there's the twist, Tom, where it provides both sides, because wind helps with unders, and contrary to popular opinion, rain actually helps with overs because the ball is slippery. There's more turnovers, the scoop and score, defenders might fall down. The hurricane brings the wind, which is unders, and the rain, which is overs. It's a very, very complicated formula you need to run on this thing.
It's a fine line that you have to walk. And, unlike Tom, whenever you speak about hurricanes first, you have to worry about the bettors. I mean, these are the people. Everybody, it's understood. Obviously, we hope and pray that everybody, will be okay that's in the zone there. And Fetner, seriously, man, hope everybody's good your way. Keep an eye on us for us. Check in with us, man. Just let us know.
I got you. I will.
Now, on a lighter note or a more serious note, if you are in SEC country and watch the Paul Feinbaum show, you know what? I want to know, Chip, about teams that ain't played nobody, Paul. All right?
Ain't played nobody. Look, I think we saw potentially one of the main reasons that Michigan kind of got a little scared from Maryland was that Michigan had been on cruise control. Michigan had been rolling through its schedule as a heavy favorite. They hadn't really opened the playbook. They hadn't really gotten hit in the mouth. And I thought that Maryland did a good job of bringing that fight to the Wolverines. Clearly they avoid, any kind of awful catastrophic home upset, but what can that result in the general idea that a team that hasn't been tested might be a little slow starting help us moving forward? I've identified 3 undefeated teams that I think have had charming soft competition so far. The first of which is UCLA, 4-0. They're going to be in action on Friday night against Washington. Their toughest opponent was Colorado, which, we talked about that one. That's about the worst team in college football. Number 2, Ole Miss, 4-0, hosting Kentucky. Kentucky has been more battle tested. Ole Miss's best win is against Georgia Tech, a team that just fired its coach. Similarly, Oklahoma State, 3-0, best win against Arizona State, a team that fired its coach. So we are in a place where those 3 teams, UCLA, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma State, this is going to be their first real test of competition, and it's important to keep that in mind when you're handicapping the game.
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is. All right, real quick before we get and start into our best bets, anybody feel free to jump in on this one. Our man Greg asks, do key numbers in football carry this in college with the bigger difference in talent and more scoring? Anybody have any thoughts on that one?
I think that they play a role in my decision of like what my out numbers are in terms of line movement. Like if I like a side based on my analysis, I will use a key number to say anything up to blank or unless it gets below blank. And I'll normally make that my wiggle room. So it ends up being a 2 to 3 point window where I might like something.
Yeah, it's definitely less of an impact in college because there's bigger disparity in talent, but you still have key numbers.
Okay, perfect, man. Guys, I appreciate that. Greg, appreciate you, buddy, for sure. All right, let's get into our best bets for the week. All right, Chip, I'm gonna start with you, man. All right, so you successfully faded Virginia last week on a team total. All right, nailed it. I mean, you absolutely nailed it. I think it was on our Early Edge Friday show, which, by the way, if you guys haven't watched those, the Early Edge, the daily shows, 10 a.m. Eastern, our Friday show is phenomenal. College football, you got Chip, you've got Emory Hunt there. He was talking about buying a steamboat, buying the Wheel of Fortune wheel. But Chip, you had nailed on Virginia in terms of their under on a team total. You're fading them here on the road against Duke, right? Duke minus 2.5. Break it down.
2 first-year coaches. Duke's got Mike Elko. Virginia has Tony Elliott. And thus far, if I'm Brennan Armstrong, I might have wished that I'd hit that transfer portal going into this season because the change in offense, the change in head coach has not been kind to him. And it's not all the coaching staff's fault. That offensive line, which lost its best player to Michigan, has been absolutely horrendous. Defensively, I think Virginia's actually gotten better than they were a year ago, but I think that group has struggled to score and will continue to struggle to score. This is a Duke team that has had great buy-in from the veterans. I think Riley Leonard at quarterback has been great so far, or at least far exceeded my expectations. And I just think that this is a pretty good Duke football team, which is finding itself in a position to get a key ACC win in a battle of first-year coaches. I just like the way that the Blue Devils have been performing so far. So give me Duke minus the short number against Virginia.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with them after Duke's, I think it was week 0 or week 1 win over Temple, right? Because, we knew Temple was not going to be a good team. We knew exactly what that was. So it's like, all right, is Duke really this good or is Temple that bad? Duke's a pretty good football team. Like, all things considered, like, when you pocket them, knowing they're not going to the playoff, right? But, like, they're a pretty good football team for what we thought that they would be. All right, Fernelli, coming over to you. Pretty good football game, and I believe this is on Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're taking San Diego State +6 at Boise State. Break that one down, man.
Yeah, Boise State is an absolute train wreck right now, and I don't think most of the country understands what's going on because Boise State, not exactly it's had plenty of success as a Cinderella in recent years. The last few years, it has not been nearly as good. It has not nearly garnered as much attention, and since it hasn't, you might not have noticed that after losing at UTEP 27-10 last week, another abysmal performance from the Boise State offense, they made the decision to fire their offensive coordinator, Tim Plow. That led to their starting quarterback, who was seemingly pretty close to the offensive coordinator, entering the transfer portal in the middle of the season. Hank Bachmeier will not be starting for Boise this week against San Diego State. And I just feel like anytime you're firing your offensive coordinator and you're losing your starting quarterback to the transfer portal during the season, things typically don't improve. Like, you don't get better. It tends to get worse before it gets better. So I think that right now, Boise State should not be a 6-point favorite against anybody, not with the way that offense has been playing. Defensively, they have not been nearly as solid as you would expect or you've come to expect from Boise in recent years. And San Diego State is still very solid on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, it can be a bit hit or miss. But I think right now, offensively, and you can't say this often, the Aztecs are the better team in this matchup. I trust them more. I think they're probably good. I mean, I think there's a decent chance the Aztecs win this one outright. I'm going to take the 6 points, though. I think that is probably one of the best bets of the week.
Man, it's rare. Speaking about Boise State, I mean, they've been consistent for a decade, right? I mean, beyond. Yeah, it's weird to see that for sure. Speaking of, go ahead.
I'm with Tom on that pick. I played Boise under 22.5. I showed last week my Boise State hat. I've watched a lot of Boise State football. I think Taylon Green in Dirk Cutter's system could be an improvement, but I don't see them scoring over 21 points. That line's a little, it's a little high for me, especially losing their offensive coordinator. They put 10 points on UTEP. I really like that play by Tom.
There we go, man. And Federer, I'll tell you what, let's stay right here with you. Speaking of another team on the road as an underdog that you're riding with, Texas Tech, coming off a big win over Texas. You're going to take Texas Tech +8 at Kansas State. Break that one down.
Yeah, so I saw this line originally at 7, and then I figured it would move in the opposite direction, but it's actually moved to 8 points. Both teams are coming off big wins last week. Texas Tech beat Texas. Kansas State beat Oklahoma. Kansas State already has a letdown after a big win against Missouri. They lost to Tulane the next week. Kansas State has won 6 straight games over Texas Tech, but 4 of those 6 games have been decided by a touchdown or less. I really like what Donovan Smith has done the last couple of weeks. I think Texas Tech can win outright. I think it's going to be within a touchdown.
There we go. All right, Chip, coming back over to you, buddy. Is this game, all right, looking at UTSA, Middle Tennessee State, is this Thursday or Friday?
Friday night on the mothership CBS Sports Network.
There we go. A wonderful network there. An excellent plug by you. Going to Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Beautiful. The absolute center of the state of Tennessee. You're taking the UTSA, Middle Tennessee State, over 63. MTSU coming off a road outright win over Miami. Break it down, Chip. What you say?
I'll tell you what, Chase Cunningham has been slinging it. That was pretty impressive as Middle Tennessee was hitting on, 69-yard touchdown, 71-yard touchdown, 98-yard touchdown plays, not drives against Miami's defense. Listen, woof, we don't even want to deal with the Hurricanes this week. I need to put them in timeout. Can't think about that group, but we can think about Middle Tennessee and an offense that is absolutely in rhythm going up against a UTSA offense that I think is going to be able to sling it all over the place. I mean, Frank Harris right now is one of the nation's most prolific individual college football players in terms of total yards of offense. He had 392 passing yards and 4 touchdowns in last week's win against Texas Southern. He has been lighting it up all season long. I think that Frank Harris and Chase Cunningham are setting us up for a shootout in this game. I mean, it is going to be good old-fashioned Cayusa kind of football. You would think that it's Larry Fedora and Kevin Sumlin out there trying to make a race first one to 50. So I like the over at 63. And sorry, I should have led with this. Shout out to Emory Hunt. We were talking about football like on Tuesday, and he was like, I like this one. And I was like, man, son of a gun. That is a fantastic pick. So I got to put it on the record somewhere, but I'll at least cite Emory for tipping me off to this total being a great opportunity to jump on the over.
Dude, Emory sees it, man. And he crushed it on Friday. I think he had 4, Friday and Saturday. I think he had 6 picks total. I think he hit 5 of them, right? He's been nailing these Jackson State with Deion Sanders. Man,
over.
This team.
Over.
Oh, God. They'll have 14 points at halftime, and you look up and they've scored 56. At the end of the game, they put up points constantly, man. So I'm with you, man. Shout out to Emory. Also, shout out if anybody's going to this Middle Tennessee State game. I've been out there multiple times. There's a place named Jim's right behind the stadium, 1 street over. Go over there. Wonderful place. You'll enjoy yourself tremendously. All right, Fernelli, coming over to you. I am so glad that these are back. My favorite thing on this entire show, Navy, Air Force, under 37.5. Service academies. Look, I'm going to get out of your way. You just break it down for anybody new that doesn't know your plan here.
Service Academy unders, a staple of the college football bettors diet. If you're unfamiliar with it, the philosophy is pretty simple. Service academies run option offenses. Option offenses run the ball constantly. In fact, Air Force is running the ball 89% on 89% of its plays. Navy is 3rd in the country at 82. In between them is Army at about 84. And nobody else in the country runs more than 70% of the time. When you're running the ball constantly, the clock never stops. When the clock doesn't stop, it limits the overall number of possessions that are played in a game. And when there are fewer possessions in a game, there will be fewer points scored. And another layer of this, Army, Navy, and Air Force have an advantage over other opponents when they run their option because those teams aren't used to facing it. You don't see it very often. There's only 3 of the 131 teams that run it. Well, these 3 run it all the time. these defenses are seeing it every single day in practice. So they know how to stop it. They know what's coming. And that is why since 2005, the under has gone 41, 9, and 1 in games between service academies. Now, I warn you, that run will likely be coming to an end sometime soon because sports books have caught on. While these totals used to be in the upper 40s and low 50s, as you're seeing now, it's still at 37.5. So they are catching on, but they caught on last year and the year before, and the under was still cashing like crazy. So they still don't have it completely right. So until they do, we are taking the under in any game between two service academies.
Dude, I'm telling you, I love it. Give that stat again one more time.
41, 9, and 1 since 2005, the under in games between service academies.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible. And look, everybody, I mean, Tom's been on this for a long time. All last year, we rode these things. Win. They're phenomenal, man. Absolutely. All right.
Also, you only get 3 of them a year. So, like, you might as well ride it.
Yeah.
They're like,
if you play all 3 and you hit 2 out of 3, I mean, 66% right there, right? So
yeah, like the sports books gives you profit boosts. Like Service Academy unders, you get 3 of them a year. They're like 3 little profit boosts from every single sports book in the country.
Yeah. I love it. And I love that, like, whoever's looking over like the finances at like each sports book, like they know it's coming in. They're like, we are getting a ton of money here on this Navy Air Force. I love it, man. All right, Fetner, coming over to you, buddy. So you've got Illinois at Wisconsin. All right. You're taking the under 43. The Tom Fornelli special on that as well. Break it down. What you got?
Yeah, so this is a model play. Our model has this game totaling just 46 points. Tommy DeVito doesn't look like Syracuse Tommy DeVito. He's been really impressive this season, but he's played but he's played Wyoming, Indiana, Virginia, and Chattanooga, not necessarily defensive powerhouses. Wisconsin defense will be a big test for DeVito and the Illini. I think we're going to see a lot of Chase Brown versus Braylon Allen there to keep the ball on the ground. This game was 24-0. Wisconsin won last year. Illinois is much improved this season, but I think it's still going to be a dogfight, a lot of running the ball. Could be a little sloppy. I like under 43 here.
Well, and you know what? I'll tell you what. We're going to skip over one chip for you because I want you to break this down. You've got an official play on this game as well. You're taking Illinois +7. What do you see out of it?
Wisconsin's not good. Number ain't caught up to it yet. What has Wisconsin done this year? I mean, like Braylon Allen puts up a bunch of yards, and I will admit that Braylon Allen is a very good running back, and that in that system he's going to have the chance to put up the kind of yards that allow him to be one of the top 10 running backs in the entire country. But they are not prepared to be a favorite of a touchdown or more, especially against an Illinois team that I think has one of the best defenses in the country. You could make an argument, and I do like the underplay, but you could make an argument that so far this season, Illinois' defense has been more impressive than Wisconsin's. Numbers are clearly not going to be the same because the competition for Illinois has not been, Ohio State and everything that Ohio State did to the Badgers. But I think there's a real opportunity for Illinois to be able to maybe even get the straight up win. But when you get a full 7 on it in a game that's going to be low scoring, Illinois has been more impressive. My expectations were different. I had higher expectations for Wisconsin than I did for Illinois. But so far, Illinois has surpassed my expectations. Wisconsin has fallen short. We might still have some value here on the Badgers.
It is a revenge game for Brett Bielema here.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't even think about it. See, I'm just even taking it into consideration based on what I've seen from these teams so far. And now you come in with that.
Dude, you got to keep a body on the kid, man. Dude, he comes with the stats constantly. All right, now speaking of a team that has raised expectations, Tom Fornelli, you are going with Kansas +3 at home against Iowa State. Break it down, man. You've been crushing Kansas for us all season long. What you got?
Yeah, this new house that I'm in, thank you, Kansas, because you bought it for me. Like, this is they're 4-0 straight up. They are 4-0 against the spread. They are covering by an average of 17.5 points per game. And nobody really has caught on yet. Like, the market is catching on a little bit, but they should not be the underdogs at home to this Iowa State team. If you look at these two teams on both sides of the ball, Kansas's offense is the best unit that will be on the field in this game. If you look at Iowa State defensively, they're not bad, but success rate, they're outside the top 50 nationally. Offensively, they're outside the top 50 nationally. This is not the same kind of plucky underdog Iowa State team that we have seen in the Big 12 in recent years. In fact, Kansas has kind of usurped that role as the Big 12's plucky underdog. They are the new Iowa State this season. So I think at home, getting those points with Jalen Daniels at quarterback and one of the most explosive offenses in the country, I think they're going to be able to put points up on the board against this Cyclones defense that looked a little leaky last week against a Baylor offense that is nowhere near as explosive as what Kansas has been to this point. I think the Jayhawks are more than likely to win outright. I am taking the points. Until the market catches on, I'm riding the Jayhawks to the bank every single week.
Dude, It's been phenomenal. Like, go ahead, Chip. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just giving it.
Yeah, I know. Dude, it's been awesome, man. I'm telling you, man. Kansas, Fornelli, dude, you have been spot on with this, and it's been fantastic. All right, Chip, coming over to you. All right, Washington, UCLA. Actually, I'm sorry. Fetner, let me come to you. I skipped you there. My fault, buddy. Okay. You have got the game of the week that everybody is paying attention to. UMass and Eastern Michigan. Everybody's talking about this.
Oh, yeah.
You're going Eastern. Yeah, you're going Eastern Michigan -20. Break that one down, buddy. What do you say?
Yeah, so UMass just lost 28-0 to Temple team. That Temple team we have as the 5th worst team in the country according to our model's neutral site power rankings. UMass is dead last. So there's a 28-point differential between the dead last and the 5th worst team. Eastern Michigan lost to a bad Buffalo team. They just got torched, especially through the air. They just got gashed that game. But I don't think UMass will be able to do anything on offense, especially with their QB situation. It's just a complete mess. UMass won this game by 14, or Eastern Michigan beat UMass by 14 in UMass last year. But this game's at home. We have them winning by 34.
There we go. By 34.
34. Yeah, this is just UMass's offense makes you want to tear your eyes out. It's rough. And Eastern Michigan has gone bowling 3 of the last 4 seasons, and including all 3 of the last seasons besides the COVID year.
And they also got Herm fired.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I mentioned in the Air Force Navy game, I said, the service academies all run the ball off, and UMass actually ranks 4th in the country as run rate at 69.7% of the time. So that gives you an idea of how much faith they have in their passing attack.
Wow. Nice stat there, man. All right, Chip, bring us home here, buddy. Washington, UCLA. It's at UCLA. You like the over 65.5.
And this is not just like a life hedge where if I'm going to have to stay up until 3 a.m. on a Friday before a 16-hour workday, I better at least cash a ticket. No, I fundamentally believe that this game, a 10:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, is going to be a 4-hour extravaganza. What do I know about these teams? Number one, that Washington, led by Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer calling the shots, is absolutely cooking people on offense. They're cooking them in the passing game. Penix is putting up a boatload of yards every single time he goes out. Number two, that if UCLA has a weakness, it is the defense. But also, I do know that UCLA has a pretty good offense and that Dorian Thompson-Robinson might be able to get out and rolling against a Washington defense that, while I do think anecdotally, it still has maintained some of the aggressiveness and ferocity that we had in that Chris Peterson, Jimmy Lake era, I also think they're maybe a little bit leaky and that UCLA might be able to get some of theirs. So I look at 2 quarterbacks who are capable of filling it up. I look at one defense that is certainly suspect and another that might be more complimentary than elite in Washington. And I see this one being a lot of points in a long game and a really rough start to our Saturday morning from a health perspective, but a great start to our Saturday morning at the bank account.
There we go. You know what? It's a fair trade-off. It's tough. I feel you, but it's a fair trade-off. And another point, I don't think you have to worry about the crowd becoming any kind of a factor on either offenses. I've seen some of the images out there at UCLA. It has not been pretty at all. All right, let's get into our Big 6 games of the week. But before we do, let's take a quick break and hear from one of our partners. And we are back. All right, our first game, we've got 22-ranked Wake Forest at 23-ranked Florida State. Florida State, a 7-point favorite, a total of 65. We have no official plays on this one, but we have leans from each of you 3. Chip, I'll start with you. You lean Florida State -7 here.
Yeah, I think that what Florida State has is one of the best defensive fronts in the entire ACC. And I do think that in this game, they also have better secondary really than where at least the secondary that Clemson fielded in that game against Wake Forest was down 2 starters and 1 key contributor. I think that Florida State's secondary as it stands right now is probably better than Clemson's secondary, and they'll do a better job of manning up against Wake Forest's wide receivers. And I will just say that this is the most leaniest of leans, because right now, how this game is played, where this game is played, whether it's going to be rescheduled, all of it is up in the air. But I kind of think that it's very tough if you're Wake Forest to go from the double overtime loss against Clemson, the way it went down, then to be dealing with all the travel stresses of trying to get into Tallahassee. You're going up against a Seminoles team that does have a much better pass defense than what Clemson had. It just doesn't shape up to a great spot for the Demon Deacons. So the leaniest of leans on Florida State, but ultimately I have no idea if this game's even going to be played on Saturday. Might get rescheduled. So, just be careful with how you lock it in if you try to.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. It also makes me think, what do we do with this total, right? 65. Like, Feder, before we get to you guys on your leans here, like what is the model saying? Like, we got a total of 65. What do you see in terms of points scored?
So the model really likes the over, but that's assuming there's perfect weather. And if the game moves to Sunday, there could be good weather. And so I would just wait. I would wait it out before you know anything. I'd wait to see before kickoff what the weather is looking like. I'd factor the weather in like an hour before kickoff. I'll go into the model. I'll adjust the scores. But right now we really like the over. We like Wake overs. We were on the Wake Clemson over, and we like the over here.
It makes sense. An excellent call there on waiting, because, it could move days, and then it could be perfectly sunny. Right exactly. After the move. So great call on that. All right, Feder, I'll stay with you. You and Fornelli, neither an official play, but you both lean Wake +7. Fett, you go first. Fornelli, follow him up.
I'm just a big Sam Hartman believer. I think he has unbelievable pocket presence. The way he climbed the pocket against Clemson was unbelievable. I was pulling them to come out with the upset last week. We have this being a shootout. Assuming there's good weather, we have FSU winning 39-38. I think it's a close game. I could see Wake having a little bit of a letdown after a heartbreaking loss to Clemson last week, but I think it could be a fun game.
Yeah, you mentioned how the model loves Wake overs, and I think part of that is because what Wake seems to do is like lure teams into shootouts, even when you don't expect it to be a shootout. Like last week against Clemson, you thought, it might be higher scoring, but you weren't expecting the tennis match that broke out, especially Fence has been in recent years and how Clemson has typically treated Wake over those same years. But it happened anyway. And I think we're going to see, depending on the weather, a similar situation in this one. But I don't know what that total is going to be. If this is high scoring, I think that, it's still going to be close. It's going to be back and forth. If the weather is adversely affecting the game, I think it's going to be close just because it's going to be much harder to score points. So again, this is not an official play for me, but I do think that Wake Forest has the best quarterback in this matchup. I do think they have a good set of wide receivers, and I think they have an explosive offense. So if I'm catching a touchdown in a game I don't have a great read on either way, I'm going to take Wake in the touchdown simply because I've built up more trust in the Demon Deacons over the last few years than I have the Seminoles, who are off to a great start, but it's still kind of, the first month of the season. Let's see how it goes the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Miami was off to a great start, right? And then they came right back to, we can't trust Miami. Can't trust them at all. So I feel you on that rationale. Absolutely. All right, our next game here. And Fornelli, we'll start with you here. All right, so we got 4th-ranked Michigan at Iowa. Michigan, a 10.5-point favorite, a total of only 42. Again, no official plays here. Tom, you lean Iowa +10.5 over that key number of 10, man. Break it down.
Yeah, the most contrarian of plays considering what Iowa has been so far this season. But like Iowa City, Kinnick Stadium is where top 5 teams go to die. If you look at the recent trends of top 5 teams that have gone to Iowa City to play the Hawkeyes, I think Iowa has won 5 of the last 6, and its loss, I think, was a pretty close loss. And this is a Michigan team that, frankly, last week raised a lot of warning signs for me because I thought they were going to destroy Maryland based on what they had done in years past. It was one of my official plays on the show. And Maryland did a very good job against them. The offensive line for the Terps held up against that defensive front and gave Talia Tungavaloa plenty of time to find receivers. And maybe Michigan's pass rush is not quite up to the snuff of what we'd seen in recent years, last year with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo. And I think that going up against what I expect to be a better offensive line in Iowa than Maryland's, they're going to have difficulty generating pressure. Now, of course, Iowa's offense stinks, so maybe that doesn't really matter much itself. But Michigan's offense, a little inefficient last week, too, against Maryland. J.J. McCarthy is showing that, maybe he's got a little too much. His clock is a little too slow in the pocket. He thinks he has more time than he does. He holds on, he sticks around and doesn't take off when he should. And it causes, negative plays, losses of yardage, and it hurts Michigan and keeps them from being able to be consistent offensively. So I think that I look at this game, the total's low. I think we've got two good defenses. I've got questions about both offenses going into it. I think Michigan's a little too reliant on Blake Corum. I think Iowa's defense can take him out and force everybody else to beat them. And I don't know that Michigan can do it. I don't think that they're going to lose. I think they're going to leave Iowa City with the win. I don't think it's going to be comfortable. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. So I'm going to take 10.5 points.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you've got a total sitting at 42 and a double-digit underdog, right? At home. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm with you on that. All right, Chip, I'm going to come over to you and then Fetner, you follow him up. Both of you, again, not an official play, but you both lean towards the under of 42 here. So Chip, start us off. Fetner, finish us up.
Yeah, I think that you respect, what Iowa can do defensively. You take into note what Michigan was not able to do offensively against a Maryland defense. And I think that if you believe that Iowa's going to be able to really cause some problems for the Wolverines right here, we're looking at what? 17-10. We're looking at, 21-17. I mean, we are under 40 for sure. So when we get anything north of 40, when I was looking at Michigan, Iowa before the openers came out, I mean, I was just, that was already programmed. That's going to be the way to go. So under 42 was a no-brainer for me. I don't see this game having a whole lot of offense. And I think that Michigan, while it can put big numbers on the board offensively, I think that they will easily get lured into. I like the way that you mentioned that, Tom, about Wake Forest. I think Iowa can lure Michigan into playing a rock fight kind of game. That's good for Iowa's chances of an upset, but it is great for the under.
Better.
Yeah, so our model actually has value on Michigan and the over, but I like Iowa and the under here. I agree with what Tom said. Michigan's not going to be able to rely on Blake Corum like they did last week against Maryland, where he had 280 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did whatever he wanted to. And this is Michigan's really first test. I still don't believe in Maryland's defense. They looked all right last week, but they still got run all over. Iowa's on a whole different level compared to what Michigan has seen. I think they hold them pretty close. I could see a 17-10 game. I could see 17-14. I think the total is a little too high here. I like the under.
Yeah, and I could also see Jim Harbaugh saying, you know what? I don't mind playing field position either, right? Like I don't have to go for anything, don't risk anything. I'm going to make you go 80 yards, and if you put up 80-yard drives and beat me, you beat me, but I don't think that you're going to do that. You know what I mean? So I could definitely see Michigan playing a conservative and falling right into exactly what all three of you just said. All right, our next game here. We've got 10th-ranked NC State at Clemson. Clemson, 5th-ranked team in the country. Clemson is a 6.5-point favorite. We've got a total of 40. Low. All right, so tell you what, Fedner, I'll start with you. You like Clemson minus 6.5. You lean that way.
Yeah, so last week, Sam Hartman really exposed this Clemson defense, but I don't think NC State and Devin Leary are going to be able to. Devin Leary, I think he was preseason ACC quarterback of the year. But I haven't really been impressed with what he's done. They've been a little more conservative than I've expected. They don't have as many weapons as they've had in the last couple of years. I just have the slightest of leans on Clemson to cover the 6.5 points. I think they could win by a touchdown or win by 2. I just don't trust NC State's offense right now.
Yeah, and Tom, I'll come over to you. This might factor into to your lean. You lean on the under 40 here.
Yeah, it's going back to what we were talking about at the top of the show with Hurricane Ian. You don't really know what the impact is going to be on this game, but based on this total that we're looking at, there's a feeling that this could be kind of, weather impacted because, again, a normal game between these two doesn't have a total this low, but the fact that it does, I don't know what to expect. This is definitely a game where I'm probably going to wait much closer to kick off if I'm placing anything, or I'm going to wait till after it started and bet live. But my pregame lean, based on everything we know now, would be to go under 40.
All right, yeah, and Chip, throwing it over to you, man. You lean Clemson minus 6.5 here. Break it down.
Yeah, I don't think that NC State right now has the personnel necessarily. If this game gets moved to Sunday, for example, or if it gets moved to a place where we're not dealing with the inclement weather, I don't think that NC State has the wide receivers to be able to take away that Wake Forest does. I mean, imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago that Wake
Right.
Forest wide receiver room is on a different level than what they've got over there at NC State. But, congrats to Dave Clawson. Anyway, that is going to make this much more about, who can win at the line of scrimmage, especially if we are talking about the elements. And while Clemson's offensive line and Clemson's run game has not been overwhelming or particularly impressive, I do think that having an absolute linebacker of a quarterback, if this thing is played in a monsoon, is going to be advantageous, especially compared to Devin Leary. And I'll throw it back to one more comment. If you remember the very first game of the season for NC State, they had 2 opportunities to punch it in at the goal line to be able to beat ECU, and they could not get it done. If you can't get the hard yards against ECU, what are you going to do against the Clemson Tigers? If this game is decided in a sloppy manner at the line of scrimmage, the one data point that we have from NC State this season suggests it might not go their way. So I lean Clemson, but it's the same as the Florida State Wake Forest game. Just wait until like an hour before kickoff when you know exactly what the conditions are and what it looks like, because there's a lot of different ways that this could go.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, man. And great point about ECU. I mean, that's perfect spot on analysis there. All right, our next game here. I am fascinated with this one. We've got 7th ranked Kentucky at 14th ranked Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 6.5-point favorite, a total of 54. All right, Tom, I'm going to come over to you first. You lean Ole Miss 6.5 here.
Yeah, Chip mentioned Ole Miss is a team that ain't played nobody in his storylines at the top of the show, and I agree with that. They really, if you look at the resume, there hasn't been a very impressive win to this point, but Kentucky has played people, and Kentucky hasn't impressed me very much when I've seen it playing people, and I think that resume or not, Ole Miss is people. I think that they are somebody that Kentucky's got to deal with. I think offensively, they're going to be able to put up points against this Kentucky team, and on the other side for the Wildcats, I know they've been without Chris Rodriguez, and that's really impacted them on the offensive side of the ball, but I just don't see a whole lot from the Wildcats offense that makes me want to trust them in a game where I feel like if you're going to win on the road in Oxford against this Rebels offense, you're going to have to score points, and I don't think Kentucky can. So as long as it's under a touchdown, again, this is not an official play, but if it's under a touchdown, I'm going to lay the points with Ole Miss just because I think I have more faith in them at this point.
Yeah, and Chip, I'm going to throw it over to you. You pretty much feel the exact same way in regards to you lean Ole Miss minus 6.5. Yeah, what do you see, man?
Yeah, I was an early on Will Levis hater. I have become an appreciator, but I am not a lover. And I was an early on Will Levis hater. Oh, what's that? Did you hear that?
Yeah, doubled you back.
Who did? Were you just going in and clipping it for later?
Apparently so.
Yeah, I was an early on Will Levis hater. I've now become an appreciator, but I'm not a lover, and I'm not a supporter against an Ole Miss defense that the Fett Show turned us on to a long time ago. Jake Fettner letting us know that all that transfer talent has turned that Ole Miss defense into arguably the stronger side of the team. They're playing at home. You've got it under a touchdown, and Kentucky at SEC West teams. No bueno, my friend. So I think that trend continues, and we see the Rebs cover this line.
There we go. Yeah, and I have no idea what that was, but I appreciate the bot or whoever it was that started clipping it off. Yeah, I appreciate that one. Fett Show. Exactly as Chip Patterson just said, you lean towards the under here, 54. What do you think?
So the model has this game totaling 51 points. I'm still not a believer in Will Levis. He's looked better lately. He wasn't great against Florida Gators, kind of had a blown coverage or two that ended up going against them with Kentucky winning that game. Ole Miss has completely changed their identity this year. They're run first compared to pass first. Jackson Dart hasn't looked great in my opinion. He's looked okay. He's done what they've needed to do to win against bad teams, but they've relied on the ground game a lot more than they have in recent years. I think they're going to try to pound Kentucky, and I think that tends to lean towards the under there.
There we go. All right, 2 final games we're going to break down, and we've got official plays on both of them, and I love it. All right, Fett, I'm going to stay with you here. So we've got 9th-ranked Oklahoma State at 16th-ranked Baylor. Baylor, a 2.5-point favorite, a total of 56.5. Fett Show, you like the under here as an official play, under 56.5.
Yeah, this is another model play here. We have the total at 49. both games between these teams last year were really low scoring. One game was 37 and the other was 38. Oklahoma State hasn't really played anyone. They played Arizona State. They played Central Michigan. They were able to do whatever they wanted. They kind of sat on those leads. And I think Baylor is going to be a real big test for them in this game. And Spencer Sanders has been inconsistent throughout his career. He could be tested here. I think this could be just a really close dogfight here.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going to throw it over to you, Chip, because you have an official play on this game as well. And I think that you two kind of agree on some tree branches here of this game. You're going Baylor minus 2.5.
Yeah, Ole Miss ain't playing nobody. Told you at the beginning of the show. I'm telling it to you 45 minutes later. And Oklahoma State ain't played nobody. And I truly think that they are meeting an incredibly battle-tested team in Baylor. I mean, Baylor has had to play some real dogfight games. The BYU game, clearly. The Iowa State game, obviously. Like, this has been a Bears team that I think has gotten some real gut checks already. And when it comes time for gut check Saturday with Oklahoma State in town, I think the Bears are going to be more ready for that fight. I love the under. Might turn it into a little 2-for-1 special come the Cover 3 Locks pod. We will see. But I think that Baylor ultimately knows who it is earlier on in the season because they faced adversity. Is that the most knuckle-dragging, vibesy analysis ever? Yes. But I also think that all of the time that we've spent watching college football has shown that early on in the season, the team that has faced the adversity, that knows what they are, that has confidence in what they need to do to get over it, that team is always going to have an advantage, and Baylor's at home. So give me the Bears.
There you go. All right, not an official play for you, Fornelli, but I think that you pretty much agree with a lot of the Chip just broke down. You lean towards the under 56.5 here and agree with Fetcho on his play.
Yeah, I just don't like either one of these offenses. I don't think they're particularly efficient. I don't think they're particularly explosive. And I think that a lot of what they've done that has been positive for them so far this season is, again, come against nobody that really matters. And I just think that once they face each other, because these two defenses are still pretty solid, and as Jacob mentioned, they did pretty well against one another in 2 meetings last year. So I think this total's too high, so staying under it.
There we go. All right, our final game. Second-ranked Alabama. All right, it has moved now to Alabama minus 18 at 20th ranked Arkansas, the total of 61. Chip, I'm going to let you start. You got an official play here. You like the over 61 in this one.
Yeah, 42-35 last year, 559 passing yards for Bryce Young in that game. Now, we don't have Jameson Williams, and we don't have John Mechie in that lineup the way that they were so productive. But we do have an Arkansas pass defense that is looking just as Swiss cheesy as it did a year ago. The one way that you can really pick apart this Razorbacks defense is through the air. I think Bryce Young is going to have a ton of success. And I do think that the Kendall Briles offense, led by KJ Jefferson, he is going to create enough problems that they're going to put together sustained drives. Now, here is where it's important. And this is the key if Arkansas is going to threaten for an upset or outright beat the Crimson Tide. I also need it for my over. They cannot settle for field goals when they get red zone opportunities. That is what Texas did, and that is why Texas lost. Texas moved the ball well enough to beat Alabama, but they didn't get touchdowns. They settled for field goals. You've got KJ Jefferson. Use his ability to run to get touchdowns. And Arkansas probably stays inside this number, threatens for an upset, and we definitely go over the total.
There we go. And you know what? Arkansas might not be going to the kicker all that quickly after what we saw last week against Texas A&M. So another official play, Micah Roberts, he couldn't join us today. He official play on Arkansas plus 18. Now, Tom, I'm going to throw it to you. Fetcho, you clean us up. Both of you, not official plays, but you both lean Arkansas plus 18. Fernelli, what you got, bud?
Yeah, I just don't think this is a great matchup for Alabama's offense because if you look at what's happened, Chip, you mentioned they don't have Jameson Williams. They don't have a lot of the explosive receivers that they've had for the most part over the last few years. And you look at this team offensively, they've put together a lot of explosive runs, but in the past game where we've seen them be, just lethal the last few years, they're pretty much ordinary this season as far as putting together explosive plays, and they're facing an Arkansas defense that is designed to limit explosive plays. They just kind of drop 8 and let you dink and dunk and try to move the ball down the field that way, and I think that kind of plays to Arkansas's advantage considering Alabama hasn't been able to find it. So I think Alabama's going to need to put together long drives to put up points. And when you're putting together long drives, that keeps the clock running. That is limiting overall possessions. And that decreases your chances of getting ahead by more than 3 scores, which is what Alabama needs to do here in order to cover this spread. So I'm going to take the Hogs and the points.
There we go. Fetch Show, break us home, buddy.
Yeah, our model has a slight lean on Arkansas to cover here. Alabama has played Louisiana Monroe and Vanderbilt over the last 2 weeks. They were 40-point favorites in both games. So it's going to be interesting to see how they rebound after just having 2 easy games. Their one game that they were tested in was Texas, and that was a 1-point victory for Alabama. And their offense wasn't too impressive in that game. I think Arkansas could keep this game close. Give me the 18 here.
Yep, I feel you on that, man. And I can't wait to watch it, man. It's going to be a fantastic SEC West battle. All right.
Yeah, on CBS, stream it on Paramount Plus.
There we go. 3:30 Eastern, correct?
Yeah, 3:30 Eastern time. We'll have you covered. It'll be Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson, and Jenny Dell on reporting.
Hey, I got to say really quick. I mean, obviously, the guys in the booth, they do a fantastic job. They've done it for a while. Jenny Dell is tremendous. Like, I loved, last week when we saw, Florida at Tennessee, she does a tremendous job. And not that she doesn't, on air broadcasting, across CBS Sports HQ, everything. She's phenomenal. I thought she did a tremendous job last week. And yeah, she's a huge, huge part of that team for sure. All right.
I mean, not news to us.
Yeah, no, dude, she's awesome, man. I know. She is just, dude, she's with it, man. She's great. All right, everybody, grab your paper, grab your pencil, take a look at the recap here. And it looks glorious because of the guys' picks here. Tom Fornelli, he is on San Diego State +6, Navy Air Force under 37.5, Kansas +3. Micah Roberts, who couldn't join us today but did get his picks over to us, Washington -2.5, UNLV -14, Arkansas +18, West Virginia +10, Washington State -3.5, and Kansas State -7.5. Chip Patterson is on Baylor -2.5, Alabama, Arkansas over 61, Duke -2.5, UTSA, Middle Tennessee State over 63, Washington, UCLA over 65.5, and Illinois +7. Jacob Fettner is on Texas Tech +8, Illinois, Wisconsin under 43, Eastern Michigan -20, Baylor, Oklahoma State under 56.5. All right. As we close this thing out, as we always do, first off, you three, thank you so much. I know how busy you guys are during the week. Cannot thank you enough for joining us and breaking down all of your best bets and your analysis here. We want to make sure, give you time to plug everything that you guys are working on. So, Tom Fornelli, I throw it to you first, man. What should we all be looking for and paying attention to?
Well, of course, you can always find me on the Cover 3 podcast with Chip, Bud Elliott, and Danny Cannell. We are on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. And we have our Saturday night reaction shows, usually around 11:30-ish, sometimes as early as 11 on Saturday nights following all the action. And you can read all my work at cbssports.com, including the Bottom 25, which comes out on Tuesdays, my quarterback power rankings, which comes out on Wednesday, my 6-pack of picks that comes out on Thursday, and, of course, the Monday after, which comes out on Monday.
I love it, man. Chip, what you got, buddy?
Yeah, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Catch me on the Cover 3 podcast. Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Catch me on the Early Edge. We'll be on CBS Sports HQ all Saturday. And yeah, man, just come hang out. We appreciate it.
I love it. And Fetch Show, like we said, we get yours on the next week's show of how our model did. But we definitely do want to say thank you again for joining us. Please be safe during all of the hurricane and the weather situations and anything else that you have. I know you and John Bowman, you guys broke down Major League Baseball today. Are you guys doing one on Friday as well?
John's moving, so unfortunately we aren't, but I will be making my Early Edge debut tomorrow morning.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go indeed, man. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. You are so appreciated. We appreciate you. Thank you. And you know what, everybody, best of luck. It's Cashy's tickets, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.